Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Feeper and today I have another World of Warcraft guide for us, but today we're going to be talking about Lightsmith Hpal. Lightsmith Hpal is super fun. It is my personal preferred way to play this class. I don't think Herald of the Sun is bad, it's just not quite my cup of tea, and I really enjoy Lightsmith. It's been a ton of fun. I really like the blacksmith kind of roleplay aspect to it. It just hits my brain juices in exactly the right way. It's literally the perfect healer for me. I think it's super cool, and I've been testing around a lot of different builds and trying to figure out what works for me and what I like, but will also let me do higher content. I've done 16s very comfortably on this build. It's a ton of fun. It's super rewarding. There's a lot of things to track. There's a lot more stuff going on. So if you want a build that involves a little bit more planning, a little bit more thought, not to say that Herald is just brainless press buttons, but a little bit more thought in planning ahead and knowing the encounters, and then that rewards you really well for doing that, I think this is the build for you. So this is the build that I've been running. You're going to notice, especially on this side, that there's a ton of things that I'm doing that no one else is probably doing, really. I haven't seen anyone run a lot of the talents I'm doing. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about the Paladin class tree first. There's not a whole lot going on here to talk about. Just make sure that you have Selfless Healer. This modifier to Flash of Light is going to be very important. And just make sure if you're playing Lightsmith, if you haven't played it before, Divine Toll, you have to have Divine Toll here because your armaments will replace Divine Toll. So if you have Holy Prism, your hero talent will turn off. Other than that, just make sure you have Quick Identification. This talent is dead for us because we don't control where the Holy Shocks go, so the cooldown reduction is far better. Other than that, you know, you can do a lot of different things here you want. I do highly recommend the Hammer of Wrath talents as well because we will be running melee wings, but I'll get to that later. So I'm going to assume you have a basic understanding of how Holy Paladin works and how Lightsmith works, but just very high level overview of what's going on here. You lose Divine Toll and you gain access to Holy Armaments. These are two different buffs essentially that you will alternate between, and the Holy Bulwark basically will just give someone and you a shield, and then the Savior Weapon will basically allow for every time you do damage or healing, there's a chance that extra damage or extra holy damage or healing will also happen to nearby targets. The Holy Bulwark will always prioritize your tank when you cast it, and the weapons will always prioritize a DPS. It is important to know that for the weapon, it will count as your damage and not the person you put it on, so you do not need to monitor, you know, who has, well, not that we can anyways anymore, but you don't need to monitor who has cooldowns or ask who has cooldowns or see who's doing the most damage or whatever. Just put it on basically anyone. It won't matter. Just make sure that you have these rolling. You don't want to hold these charges for more than 5 to 10 seconds unless you really need to for some reason. Now, in terms of the rest of the nodes here, you're going to be taking Ray of Sanctification, giving up 5% main stat and armor for 3% stamina, and who knows how much healing is not worth it. I do want to try this talent just to see what the overall healing it does ends up being. I can't imagine it's enough to make us not want to take this, but talking about other choice nodes, Divine Inspiration is extremely powerful and kind of is what allows this build to work. So I will talk about that interaction in a second. I just want to go through the choice nodes first. This one sounds very tempting, but trust me, this is infinitely better. Blessed Assurance is what you're going to be taking 90% of the time. The only time I would take Divine Guidance right now, is if you have a primarily melee DPS comp. I was testing this talent a lot a couple weeks ago, and I didn't even have a full DPS comp. I think we had, or sorry, full DPS comp. We didn't even have a full melee comp. It was just me, the tank, and one melee. And this was doing like 5 to 6% of my overall. So like overall healing. So it can do a lot of healing. Like don't underestimate that. But if you have 2 or more ranged, I would not recommend taking this talent. So most of the time, I think Blessed Assurance is just a safer bet. Now, Rebuke versus Tempered in Battle is really a personal choice, whatever you like. I just don't like doing higher keys with Tempered in Battle. Yes, the healing is really nice, and I should try it some more, but I feel like I've had too many close calls where I get a bolt or someone gets a bolt, and then I Tempered in Battle heal them, and then an AoE goes off, and then all of a sudden I'm having to lay on hands myself or whatever. Just not knowing exactly when this is going to happen as a healer sometimes can kind of troll you and get you killed. And there's also a lot of dispels in this season, especially in like Windrunner, for example. So I think this talent is just more useful for me overall. It might not seem like 1 second to 2 seconds off your dispel cooldown is that big of a bonus, but trust me, it is a huge, huge plus. So I personally really like Rebuke, but you can use either. And you can also change it depending on the dungeon. If there's not a lot of cleanses, obviously this loses all its value because you're not really cleansing. In terms of other talents, key talents to talk about, Valiance is good to know. Every time you consume an infusion, and you're going to be consuming a lot of infusions with this build, you will reduce the cooldown of your armaments by 3 seconds. That's another reason why Forewarning is kind of just not needed. And then on the right side here is sort of the Hammer and Anvil tier set that they turned into talents here. Hammer and Anvil, unfortunately right now, I love you so much. I wish you to be good. Unfortunately, this talent is just terrible. It's just a little bit of extra healing, I guess, but I mean, 2,800 to 3,000 healing divided by 5 allies whenever your Judgment crits is just absolutely terrible. This talent is not going to do any meaningful healing right now. I do really hope Blizzard gets over their fear of Judgment being good. I don't know why they're so scared of it, but until they get over that, this talent will not be good. Just think of it as a little bit of extra healing, but do not prioritize Judgment crits over other stuff because it's not going to be enough. Masterwork is something that I do recommend that you track and you keep track of. Basically, after you cast an armament, 3 lesser versions will be cast onto a nearby ally. So you cast a shield, and then the next 3 abilities you use will cast a very small shield to a random person. Same thing with the weapon. You don't want to overcap these, but if you don't want to deal with tracking it or something happens and you need to use another weapon immediately after using of the first one and you can't do 3 skills in between, that's totally fine. It's just a min-max thing. I personally like to track it because I just like tracking those kinds of things, but you don't need to. It's down to personal taste. Now, Blessing of the Forge is important to know because, one, whenever you cast Wings, whichever one you're using, you will throw out a Sacred Weapon. What that means, effectively, is every time you cast Wings, you will get 3 Holy Power because your armaments give you Holy Power now as of the last patch. You also will get an echoing effect on all of your Holy Power spenders, so you Shield the Righteous, you'll get kind of like a free second one. Same thing with your Light of Dawn and Word of Glory. How much the little hammer that spawns near you when you press Wings echoes that at, I have no idea. Blizzard doesn't seem they want to tell us. It feels like it's closer to 20 or 30% kind of thing. But just know that when you're in Wings, you will feel quite strong because of this talent, and your Holy Power abilities will get echoed. The most important talent out of everything here is Laying Down Arms. The cooldown reduction on Lay on Hands is nice. It's not that big a deal, though. The biggest thing is whenever an armament fades from you, you will gain an infusion of light. And since we're taking Inflorescence of the Sunwell, this talent basically says whenever an armament runs out, get 2 infusions, which is insanely, insanely strong. One of the reasons why I like Lightsmith so much more than Herald is because Herald has just abysmal infusion generation ever since they changed it to being a % chance on Holy Shock instead of when Holy Shock crits back in War Within. So Lightsmith just has insane infusion generation, and I personally just find it to be way more fun. The other really important thing about this is if you already have a weapon or a shield out, and then you cast another one, whether that be actually casting it, you get a Divine Inspiration proc, or you press Wings, it'll refresh the duration of that armament and automatically like consume, quote unquote, the old one and give you 2 infusions. So if you use Sacred Weapon and then you press Wings, not only will you be gaining a total of 6 Holy Power, which would obviously overcap you, but you would get 6 total Holy Power and 2 infusions. So when you can get some really good healing lines where you Wings, you Wog someone, you double infusion, and then you're going to be either back at 5 or you're going to be at 4 Holy Power, and then you can Wog someone again. It's very, very powerful. That's a very, very key thing that you need to understand about this build. And let me go show you that as well, in case you don't believe me. It's something that I haven't noticed other people talk about when they play Lightsmith. I don't really know why, because it's like the strongest part about the hero talent. But, okay, so you see there, I just got a Sacred Weapon, right? So I have a Sacred Weapon out. I have a Holy Bulwark out. Okay. So now I have this weapon. I'm going to press Sacred Weapon again. 2 infusions, and it refreshes the cooldown on this. or the duration on this. So do not underestimate that. That is extremely, extremely powerful, and it will save people on your team. You need to be able to understand that, and you need to track your bulwark and sacred weapon durations, because this is a core part of playing the build. This is not some niche interaction that you can make use of sometimes. Like, you need to keep track of it and know when you can force infusion procs, because it's very, very strong. Now let's get to the spec tree. The main thing that I want to talk about first is melee wings. So the whole concept behind this build that I've created is I really wanted to make Avenging Crusader feel good. This talent, this and Hammer and Anvil, like, just make my brain go unga bunga, ooga booga, zug zug. And I just absolutely love these talents. I think it's such a cool concept for a healer to be, you know, I do like Mistweaver as well. I like that melee healer fantasy. I kind of enjoy the ebb and flow of being really strong in wings and then kind of weak outside of wings, because it really rewards you lining up your cooldowns correctly and understanding the dungeon and being able to plan ahead. So I've been trying to figure out a way to make Avenging Crusader feel really good. The first issue I had was we do not have a good spender of holy power when you're in Crusader. It felt like when I first started messing around with this talent this season, just overcapping holy power by an insane amount and just spamming Hammer of Wrath and Crusader Strike felt more efficient to me than Light of Dawning in between or Word of Glorying in between, unless I really needed to top someone up by a big amount in an emergency situation. So I was trying to figure out ways to make this feel better. As a side note, I do think Avenging Crusader should give its damage conversion to Shield of the Righteous as well, so we actually have a good spender in melee wings right now. But besides the point, that was sort of the main concept behind this build, was how do I make Avenging Crusader feel better? So the first thing I started looking at was, how do I get a better spender? Obviously, Word of Glory, there's not a ton of things you can do to buff it, but there are a lot of things you can do to buff Light of Dawn. And Light of Dawn has gotten over a 60% buff now in the past 2 patches, because it was like 30% 2 patches ago, and then it was 30% again on top of that already buffed 30%. So Light of Dawn is doing some pretty decent healing, and that's why if you look at stuff like Murloc, that's why Lightsmith has actually fallen off recently compared to Herald, because Herald double dips on Light of Dawn, whereas Lightsmith does not. So I started looking at ways to buff Light of Dawn. So obviously the first thing is Unending Light and then Breaking Dawn, running these talents. I was running this for a while, and I'll get into some variations in a bit. I do think now that Light of Dawn just heals for so much more after the buffs, I don't think you actually need this talent anymore, and it's really hard to get this to be rank 2. You can kind of only really get it to be rank 1 unless you drop this. But I was messing around with these talents, and it started to feel better. I felt like I had a better spender. I could, build up to 4, 5 holy power, use Light of Dawn to heal. And so after that, I started thinking about, okay, how do I make this even better? So that then led me to Beacon of Virtue, because this says Unending Light is your Light of Dawn receives 20% increased mastery effect from your mastery. And I was like, well, what if everyone had my Beacon instead of just 3 people? So I started running Beacon of Virtue, and at first it felt absolutely terrible. I was like, this is unplayable. I can't even do a 12. Like, this is awful. Pillars of Light really changed that. If you are going to run this build, you have to take Pillars of Light. This is non-negotiable. If you don't have this talent, you are running Beacon of Faith. I think Beacon of Virtue should be off the global cooldown, but again, that's a story for another video. This really changes the game, because now when you press Beacon, it will heal everyone immediately for like half a holy shock, essentially. Having a dead global to then set up your healing felt so bad. And while this isn't a lot of healing, it is enough to make Beacon of Virtue not just sort of end up killing people, because it puts you so far behind. So if you're going to run this build and run Virtue, you have to run Pillars of Light. We're running Rising Sunlight because this is basically just a free 5 to 10% healing bonus, because you're running AoE Beacon. We're still running Light of the Martyr talents with Blessed Assurance and Glorious Dawn, because the Holy Shock healing is still very important and very integral. I'm still taking the Light of Dawn talents. I did try Truth Prevails, and I think in lower keys, this actually blows Divine Overload out of the water. I was trying some 12s and 13s, and I logged, and Truth Prevails was causing my Judgment to jump up from like my 6th to 5th healing to my 3rd. It was actually really, really good, and because you're using Hammer of Wrath / Judgment so much more with melee wings, this felt really nice. But in higher keys, when there's just more rot damage, or I guess there isn't more rot damage, but the rot damage is higher in terms of what it's doing, and people are just getting hit for so much more damage overall, this talent essentially ends up being nothing. I think I tried this in a 15 or a 14, and Truth Prevails literally contributed like 1% healing to Judgment. I was like, okay. This is just unplayable. So in lower keys like 13 and 12 and below, I think this talent's really fun and you can use it, but above that I would just run Divine Overload. Missing out on this 30% healing modifier also, I could really feel it. So even though you're not going to be casting Holy Light that much with this build, I do think it's still worth taking this talent because this isn't as good, and this is a 2-point talent that we're not going to take, so you might as well get it because we have to get down here. So I felt like I sort of solved the Light of Dawn Holy Power Spender issue with this build, and because we have so many infusions and because of the interaction that I showed you before with laying down arms, that led me to trying Tears Deliverance. I still think Hand of Divinity is good. I mean, getting 3 Holy Power, basically 2 infusions and a free Holy Light when you press wings every minute is very, very strong. Do not get me wrong. I just feel like the extra 10% modifier on Tears Deliverance for Holy Shot or for Holy Light, oh my god, for Flash of Light, there's too many lights. For Flash of Light is really, really strong. All in all, between Tears Deliverance, Selfless Healer, Moment of Compassion, just your normal infusion buff, and Divine Revelations, if you when you have your beacon out and you have an infusion and you Holy Light someone or you Flashlight someone, that Flash of Light is doing just shy of 300% more healing, and it's instant cast. Very, very powerful. And most of the time, unless there's literally no damage going on, you're going to be spending your infusion procs on Flash of Light. The only time you want to spend it on Judgment is if you really need to build the Holy Power for some reason, or there's just no real damage going on and you're just kind of pumping dam in the meantime. But if there's any damage happening at all, just send out those Flash of Lights. It's going to be a huge source of your healing. So that kind of is overall the general concept behind this build. In terms of things that you can flex on, you can drop Ringing of the Heavens. I just like this because it gives Aura Mastery a little extra oomph, and also it can, depending on how many armaments you have out and stuff, because it gives you, you can't get control which one it does. It'll just do a random bulwark or a random weapon, but it can also just mean that this gives you 2 extra infusion procs, which can be very powerful. But you can drop this if you want to get more damage. You can do Righteous Judgment. This is going to be more damage than Shining Righteousness. You could also, if you really want to do more damage, you could drop Unending Light, or I guess Bestow Light to get Shining Righteousness. I don't think that's really worth it. It just, we already have enough Divine Purpose procs, I think. It's not really needed. Your healer damage is not going to be the reason why you don't time a key. Your healing is going to be the reason why you don't time a key. So I just don't think this talent's really needed. You could also drop this for an extra point in Breaking Dawn, and then if you really want to get double here, you could do that. I still think Bestow Light is powerful enough that you don't want to do that. So if I didn't like this talent, I wanted more healing, I would probably do this. Or if I just wanted to blast a bit more and not have to worry about mainly casting Consecration, you can just take this talent. Now, in terms of other variants, if you wanted to do, say you have a full melee group, and you wanted to do a more Consecration-focused build, I would run something like this. This is a little bit outdated. I would probably still run this here, and then this there, like that. I would probably run something like this. Very, very similar. You're basically just swapping out this talent, and you're taking Consecrated Ground. Otherwise, it's basically the same as the other talent here. Oh, and then you would do that there as well. You can also run this build with normal beacons and basically just do the normal Lightsmith Paladin build. I think the normal Lightsmith Paladin build is this, and then you're running crit rings. This is kind of the normal setup you're going to see. Sorry, this is the normal setup you're going to see. I think because if you're going to run Avenging Crusader, I think Legacy is really strong because you're just going to get so many more Avenging Wrath or Hammer of Wrath and Judgments out. And now that Light of Dawn is actually healing for a decent amount, this 30% effectiveness does matter. It does actually heal a good bit. And you do get free Awakening procs. Not a lot, but consistently enough that I think this talent is a little bit slept on for Lightsmith and is powerful. But you could run Seek Deliverance. If you watched my last video, you know I hate talents like this. So that's part of the reason why I don't take it. And then obviously, if you really want, you can just run the normal Crit Wings build. That's also totally fine. hopefully that sort of gives you an overview of this build. I don't think I missed anything. Hopefully I explained the thought process behind my choices. I know this is a little bit more in-depth than the Brewmaster guide that I made, but I think it warrants that because I'm doing a lot of weird things over here, but hopefully my thought process sort of explains why and it makes sense as to why we're taking this beacon, why we're focusing so much more on Flash of Light, why we're not taking these damage towns because we don't need them, why we're running tiers instead of divinity, etc., etc. So I'm going to switch over to some gameplay. This is a 15 Magisters that I did. I unfortunately didn't record any of the 16s I did or the 17s because I don't know, wasn't thinking at the time. But this is a 15 that I did, and just mostly as background footage. In terms of how you play this build, again, you need to track your Holy Bulwark and Sacred Weapons and be able to force infusion procs when you need them. And then other than that, your main window is going to be Avenging Crusader. I like to press Beacon of Virtue and then go into Crusader, because when you Crusader, then you have 3 Holy Power, so I'll either Light of Dawn if there's kind of just low rot damage, or if I need the single target, I'll Wog, and then double Flash of Light, because you should get 2 infusion procs off of it, and then you just go into your normal, Hammer Wrath, resetting that cooldown, don't overcap Holy Power, spend it on Word of Glory or Light of Dawn, and just you kind of go back and forth between that loop, and I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised at how fast you can blast up health bars, especially in AoE with this build, because Flash of Light is just absolutely trucking. And then if you don't have Holy Power to Word of Glory, you need a chunky single target heal. That's where Holy Light comes in, or Holy Shock will come in. And then other than that, it's pretty standard to how you play Holy Paladin normally. It's just you're focusing more on your infusions being spent on Flash of Light rather than Judgment, and using AoE Beacon. A tip with AoE Beacon is you always want to have it either press it immediately when big AoE happens or right before, and you need to be set up for it. So there are going to be times where you might need to just not do your rotation and not use a Holy Shock or not use a Word of Glory or something, because in 3 seconds some AoE is going to come out and you need to stock up on your resources. This build does require a bit more thought and planning and knowledge of the dungeon than Herald of the Sun. So if you're not into that playstyle, you're not into that sort of thing, then I would probably not recommend this build to you. But if you want something that rewards you for knowing the dungeon really well and executing on your game plan, I think this build is going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be a really good change of pace, because you're running you're running AoE Beacon and Melee Wings, which are very different than running just the 2 passive beacons and crit wings, and I think you'll have a lot of fun. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know if this build worked for you. Let me know if I troll your keys inadvertently by giving you this build and everyone died on the first poll. Let me know how it goes, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.